Today, we will be diving into why Final Destination 3 is meh. Let's get into it. Guys, so today we'll be giving our 5 reasons of why Final Destination 3 is meh. Ryan, what's 5th place for you?
So 5th place for me is this film has way too many throwaway characters, and it takes a toll on the kill sequences because some of these kill sequences, we don't care about these characters because we didn't even know they were in the film. There's a sequence with a girl at the Centennial where she gets impaled by some pole from the horse. And you just really, because you didn't even see this girl in the film at all. So I just thought that was one of the weaknesses of this film. So what is your number 5, Kevin?
So my number 5 is the ending of this film. As you guys know, with Final Destinations 1 and 2, the ending was one that shocked you, one that actually made you think. A bit of a conception. If you've all looked at Inception, the movie, or watched that movie, you remember, is it spinning? Is the little spinner spinning, or is it falling? Which one? What is the ending? That was the similar situations for Final Destination 1 especially, and then a little bit along the way Final Destination 2. But with this particular film, it seemed to not know what it was doing. It was going too quick on the ends. It didn't really feel like it actually set the stage to earn what it ended up doing for the final scene. So for that reason, that's my number 5. Ryan, what's your 4th place reason?
For me, coming in at number film is after watching this film 2 times in the past week, the one thing that I dislike, or one of the things I dislike, is the fact that it's too short for me. I knew there was something that didn't feel right about this film after the second viewing of it this week. And it just feels like the film doesn't set up the characters enough to make the kills impactful. And that's why the runtime is so short. And that's the main thing that I don't like about this film. So that's my number 4, Kevin. What is yours?
So my number 4 is the lack of story in this particular film. So we did get some iconic kill scenes. We had the tanning bed scene. So that was one of the iconic ones. We also had the gym scene where we see the gym bro meet his demise with having his head squashed with the gym equipment. Those were quite funny, but what the turn down was is we really didn't know these characters. We didn't really get to know the girls that got killed in the tanning bed. We really didn't get to know the football player that well. They were caricatures of early 2000s high school stereotypes. And so for that reason, it didn't have the build up. The kills didn't have the build up that we otherwise would have liked. And that's why it was meh for me. Ryan, what is your 3rd?
So my number 3 piggybacks off my number 4, and it is the fact that they don't develop these characters in this film. It's as if they were hitting certain bullet points or checkpoints, with these characters, and they don't develop them. And then they make them over exaggerate themselves by being caricatures. And that's why their kills are not very impactful when you see the kills in this movie. And so that is my biggest thing with the characters, or one of my biggest things, is the fact that these characters are just not well developed. They're underutilized and underdeveloped, Kevin. So what is your number 3?
My number 3 is tonal inconsistencies. So there's some portions of the film that seem very serious. There's others, are we supposed to laugh? Can we laugh at this part? Is the audience supposed to laugh? There's other parts that may be so bad that you wonder if the intent was that this is supposed to be a campy film. But the problem is there's no consistent through line on what the tone actually should be. I think a part of the reason why there isn't one is we're missing a character. That character is Tony Todd's William Bloodworth character. He's not a part of the film, and that's part of the reason why we don't really have someone to tell us or provide some severity and seriousness to what's actually going on. So we end up getting a lot of scraps here and here, which lead us to tonal inconsistency. So that's my number 3. Ryan, what's your number 2?
So coming in at number 2 is the fact that this is the film that set the trend for the other following Final Destinations over reliant use of CGI, blood and gore. This CGI is just so digital, so over the top. Now, it's not quite as bad as the 4th one, but it's too, it almost looks like somebody did it on a PlayStation 3. The graphics just look so bad, and there's not much practical use besides the tanning bed kill, but every other kill outside of that is just all CGI blood, and it just takes me out of the film. And so that is why that comes in at number 2 for me. Kevin, what is your number 2?
So the characters are way too thin. And I'm not talking about them being thin physically, the actual makeup of the character, who these characters are, what are their motivations, what are the reasons why they are motivated in the way and do the things that they are. As I went through when I was in college, Psychology 101, we talked about schemata, and schemata is your worldview. None of these characters seem to have a worldview, or at least the storyline didn't talk about it. And so we really only end up having one sort of fleshed out character, and that's Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character is sort of fleshed out there to a certain degree. She's the glue that keeps this film working, even though many of the parts were unsuccessful, but all the other characters that you see in the film don't work at all. The girls in the tanning bed, the jock, and the pervert guy that you see, and the other guys that you see in the movie, they don't seem to work, nor does Mary's sister in the film. She doesn't seem to work at all. Or like Ryan said, the girls that were in one of the kill scenes but not in most of the movie, it just doesn't work. For that reason, that's my number 2. Ryan, what's your number 1?
So coming in at number 1 is the fact that we have too many unlikable characters in this film, and it's almost as if the filmmakers they're obviously trying to make you hate these characters to enjoy watching their deaths, but it's too many of them, and it doesn't impact you enough because they're not very well developed. And one of the main characters I'm talking about is the jock character. I believe the actor that plays him or portrays him is Texas Battle. That's the African-American football player guy. He's probably one of the most unlikable characters in this film, along with the Ian McKinley character, who is actually one of the, I guess, the secondary antagonists. I don't really care for either one of those characters. They're too over the top, too exaggerated, and they're caricatures and they're unlikable. And so that's why this is my number 1 reason why this film is meh. So what about you, Kevin?
My number 1 reason this film is meh is that it happens to just play off of 1 and 2. We know 1 is the original. Obviously, it had nothing to play off of. It was original script. So it was in and of itself 1 of 1. Number 2 was also a 1 of 1 because of the premonition. We all can recall the premonition of the car pileup, and then the truck that had the logs in the back of it, and the police car, and everything in there is very memorable because it relates to reality. This film just tries to do that sort of roller coasters. Some people go to roller coasters, but when you get a certain age, you're probably not going to a roller coaster unless you have kids of that age that want to go. And even then, you're probably not going to take your kids there out of safety precautions. So this roller coaster vibe didn't really land a punch there with that premonition. And then also, like I said earlier, the lack of Tony Todd in this particular film, it loses its tonal consistencies. And then also was just the overall fact that most of the characters didn't really land at all, and they seemed to try to play up some high school stereotypes that maybe they thought were in the previous films, but were played by better actors, so they were a little bit more subtle. But this film had bad acting, so the stereotypes were so apparent, and the acting was so melodramatic. And for that reason, that's my number 1 choice. Ryan, what Fright Brother grade would you give this film?
So the only saving grace that this film has is Mary Elizabeth Winstead's acting performance, along with Ryan Merriman. Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing Wendy Christensen, and Ryan Merriman portraying Kevin Fisher. So with all these negatives and that being a saving grace, I'm gonna have to go with a Bart minus on this film. It was just a mediocre Final Destination movie, and so that's why I'm going with a Bart minus. What about you, Kevin?
For me, I have to give this film a whimper. The reason it's given a whimper is because it really didn't have story development. It really didn't have character development. And really, like you said, the only thing that's a saving grace is the acting there of the main protagonist. So this film is a whimper for me. Ryan, what are we working on?
We're working on finishing up the Final Destination series. Next we'll move on to the Final Destination 3D.
And remember, Fright Fam, be watchful!